AM 1380, The Biz, the Wall Street Business Network.
Are you one of the 9 million Floridians living in a community managed by a property manager or HOA? If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a resident or what your role is as a volunteer board member, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Condo Coaches, your resource for when your gated community starts to feel more like you're stuck behind bars, or when that guy next door decides that a hot pink Chevy on cinder blocks really sets the tone for the neighborhood. The Condo Coaches is brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. And now your host, Johnny Torres.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's the Condo Coaches. From whenever, wherever you may be listening, don't forget, if you've missed a single episode, you can always follow us on social media, all across social media, facebook.com/the Condo Coaches. Also on YouTube, search the Condo Coaches. You'll find every episode. Now we're at number 26 with today's show, so that's incredibly exciting. Tons of video for you to watch and digest when it comes to running your homeowners association or condominium association, or even if you're just a resident. We also love hearing from you as well. For those of you listening for the first time, again, we are a team of volunteers sharing our expertise in a variety of industries to help you run your homeowners condominium association effectively, efficiently, and on budget. Don't forget, we also have a podcast version of the show you can catch on iTunes, SoundCloud, Overcast. There's tons of great podcast services out there, Stitcher. So if you love podcasting, and it's kind of making a comeback, the podcasts are, you can also get the audio version for your daily commute, and you'll find every episode of the Condo Coaches on our podcast as well. With me, as always, head coach Dean Akers. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Johnny. You had a busy week this week for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Mother's Day weekend, of course, was last weekend, and it was just all the attention on the moms, right?
Well, but the last week I was on vacation.
Okay.
Somebody forgot to tell.
In air quotes.
Yeah, somebody forgot to tell everybody else I was on vacation. So we had tons of calls. I actually attended some meetings with some boards, and then I also attended a transition deal with a board president and a property management, and there were some interesting things that came out of that.
So, in other words, the Condo Coaches don't take vacation.
No, the Condo Coaches don't take vacation.
Well, and for those of you who are familiar with the show, don't forget, if you do want to reach out to the Condo Coaches, again, 365 days a year, you can do so at thecondocoaches.com, thecondocoaches.com, our website. You can also catch us on our email address, help@thecondocoaches.com. help@thecondocoaches.com is our email address. And then last, of course, is our phone number, where you can bug Dean 24/7, or we'll get you plugged into the Condo Coaches network, get you paired up with the right condo coach for you. And that number is 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. And then joining us today, we're going to be talking HOA Elections, is an HOA election monitor. Mr. John Gorman, how are you, sir?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to be here, Johnny. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we'll get into your background a little bit, and of course get into the topic a little later on. But we always love opening the first segment with, of course, some of Dean's adventures in the Condo Coaches world, and some emails and text messages, phone calls that we get from people all across the state of Florida. We'll kick off with an email that we got last week. This is from James down in the Boca Raton area, Palm Beach County area. He says, I'm the president of the association. All right. So thank you for your service, James. And he says, my treasurer took it upon herself to enter into a contract with a third party without the board's knowledge or approval. Am I able to terminate her position on the board for this act? That's pretty. It's both on both ends. I mean, that's a pretty serious matter there.
I would talk to their counsel about terminating them for the act, but I would say this: that the contract she entered into, and I'm not the attorney, I'm the condo coach, but the contract that they entered into, and I'm sure their attorney will convey the same opinion. The contract can't be entered into with one person without board approval.
So it's a void contract.
Yeah, I mean, they just need to call up whoever it was and say, look, the contract, we didn't vote on it. So if they don't vote on it, there's no contract. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is I do know this, that having been a vendor before, when there's no contract and there's never been a legal contract, don't be crying when you don't get paid.
That's right.
As a vendor, I've done that. So.
Yeah. Well, and so to that point, again, make sure you talk to the legal counsel. I'm sure there is some procedure, to have that person removed if you feel that. I'm thinking if you're going straight for removal, there's probably a history there, rather than kind of a slap on the wrist. And, but it seems like the board, for the most part, is not contractually obligated to abide to by this contract.
Well, the association isn't.
Right.
Just by virtue of the board. But at the same time, I would definitely reach out to legal counsel on the responsibilities of that person, whether they could be ejected from a board. I mean, I really don't know, and I don't even want to issue opinion. I don't know if you know, John, just with your election issues, if somebody violates a thing on a board, do they get 86th?
The information that I would probably refer to is the removal, and again, that's stated in the 718 statute. There is a process, and again, it's totally on how and again, if the docs are silent in that regard, I would honestly refer strictly to counsel, the association's counsel, for guidance in removing a person for something of this nature.
Yeah.
Again, the severity, and I agree with Dean, because I came from an industry where I was a vendor myself, but our specifics were, we always asked for the president, who was usually the person that was designated to make the signature or decision on behalf of the association.
Yeah.
But again, as a vendor, you're probably looking at the possibility of not getting your product sold or your services taken care of because of one person going out to represent the entire association.
He may have heard his status there as a vendor, where maybe that board's not willing to do business with him anymore simply because he's kind of been tarnished now by this contract. But like I said, not to, add too much drama to the situation, but if James is going right for removal, there may be a history there, or just not a great relationship. Because in this kind of a situation, you say, all right, the contract's void, slap her on the wrist, and let's move on. And but who knows? All right, so
that's definitely for the association's counsel, because he made a good point that a lot of people, that's a term called if the documents are silent, and that's a big term in dealing with stuff.
Okay.
And what that means is it's not specific. Okay. So when a document is silent to a fact, you want to get an attorney for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Now, again, if you want to submit your issue, your question, help at thecondocoaches.com, help at thecondocoaches.com. You can also submit them through our website at thecondocoaches.com, thecondocoaches.com. Another email here also from the Palm Beach County area. Thank you so much for those of you listening down there. From Michael. Michael says he's also the president of the Community Officers Association of Singer Island. Their role is also to help the board members do their job, but they'd like for us to come down and do a workshop with them and see if we can help improve the job that they're doing down there. And so the answer is absolutely. We'd love to come down and work with your community association, your homeowner association. We've even had some where they'll get a number of them together. Right. So if you live in a master plan community that maybe has 10 different HOAs, let's get them all in a room and let's do a workshop for all of them. And so we would absolutely love to do that, because that's why we're here, to get that secured for your HOA. All you got to do is reach out to Mr. Dean Akers. Again, help at thecondocoaches.com via email, or thecondocoaches.com via our website, and all that eventually gets back to Dean. So send those requests on in, because we'd love to meet with you guys and make sure that you're running a tight ship.
Absolutely.
Dean, any stories there from the wilderness?
Had a couple not crazy. I'm seeing it more and more, and I don't even know why it's so predominant, but the financial statement issue.
Yeah.
Had another association that we helped through the Condo Coaches. Went through, we found stuff that didn't make sense.
Okay.
And it wasn't fraudulent looking or whatever. And so we reached out to the property management company and said, look, these transactions. Met the property management company, and they said it wasn't their responsibility. What happened was 4 years ago, they took over, they brought in new balance sheet balances without getting the details. So we reached out to some of our condo coach accounting folks, and they said management company that took over has a responsibility to get those numbers accurate.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to help them a little bit there. We've had some interesting dialogue with the management company. That was a big one. Another big question we had was on hurricane reserves.
Okay.
And I think that everybody I've checked with, that's more of a decision of a board. And John and I were talking about it. Really, it's a reserve for something that has a event that could happen later and or like a roof or whatever. So if you're a little condo and you don't have much money for the deductible, it's reserved for the deductible.
Okay.
If you have $1 million deductible, you're going to want to start stashing some money away.
That's right.
You may never use it, and you can collect interest on it, but you don't want to leave that for somebody 5 years from now when a Cat 5 hits
When
and
it
all of a
does
sudden,
hit, Well, and great timing on whoever brought up that issue, because of course summer is just around the corner and hurricane season will begin. And now with again they've always been unpredictable, but it seems to me that the hurricane season, especially for us Floridians, has been very unpredictable over the past few years.
I might add, and again, from my years of experience in the insurance business, you have many associations that have made decisions on higher deductibles.
Okay.
Again, sometimes the clarity of insuring the building and the way the association board has elected to lower the premiums for the sake of the association, they may have elected to take higher deductibles. So if you're into the higher deductibles, 5%, 10% of the wind coverage, you're looking at catastrophic amounts of money that you may have to come up with.
Right.
And there's also gaps in the insurance. So again, those are kind of things that possibly they should have good advice from their insurance agent, of course, but most importantly to just cover those areas that they say, well, we're not covered, so we should start looking into a fund.
Well, and we've done a couple shows on catastrophic events and insurance and that sort of thing. So for those of you listening, make sure you go into our YouTube or our Facebook page and catch those previous episodes on those topics. We'll be back with John Gorman talking HOA elections, head coach Dean Akers. It's the Condo Coaches Radio Show, segment 2, coming up.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, "I'm a catch," more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can catch every single episode, 26 of them now, on Facebook.com/The Condo Coaches or on YouTube. Just search The Condo Coaches. Will come right up as the first result. We also want to remind you, we talked a little bit about insurance, catastrophe insurance, and that sort of thing, and deductibles, and also the financial status of your community. One of the things that people absolutely love that we do absolutely free for homeowners and condominium associations is a financial assessment, because really that is the root of most of your problems when it comes to running a homeowners association, a condominium association, is the financial aspect of how your community is doing. And again, if you don't understand it, that's okay. Let us know that you don't understand your financial situation in your community. We have a booklet that you can download. I'll tell you about that in a second, that breaks it all down for you. And then we can also come in as the Condo Coaches, get all your numbers and break it down in a way that you and the rest of your board and your residents are going to understand and give you a solid representation of where your community stands. Doesn't mean your community's in a solid place, but it certainly means that you'll get a black and white read on exactly where you need to be financially.
Yeah, and we've had, again, I get a lot of these, and we just take the management report from the year end, a management report from a previous year end from the property management, and then a year to date, and we do that, and we just give them a quick explanation. I call it layman's terms, and most of the boards we've done it for, they never have had anybody help them with this at all.
Wow.
And they're really blown away. And in one board, I think we told you we met in Fort Pierce, they were all nervous. We went in and showed them they were so perfect, so well run, not to worry.
Yeah.
And
it's the ones that don't worry. They usually have quite a mess underneath.
Yeah. It's that old looking down the tunnel and going, is that light at the end of the tunnel or a train?
Right. Well, as I mentioned, we do have a booklet that has been incredibly popular. That is a free download from our website. If you go there now, it's the condocoaches.com/playbook. Now, one of our booklets is Understanding Your Community's Finances. Incredibly important. But the great thing is that when you reach out to us and you fill out the form just to let us know you're an actual human being, we let you download all 4 of our booklets in a single shot, and we also email them to you in easy to download, easy to read PDFs. And all you got to do is go to our website, thecondocoaches.com/playbook, thecondocoaches.com/playbook. And once you fill out that form, we'll email you the booklets, and right there, it'll auto-populate. You can download them right there from the website as well. The 4 booklets, of course, are the top 10 things you need to know if you're an HOA or COA board member. The second booklet is Collecting Delinquent Association Fees, also a big heavy hitter when it comes to the financial status of your community. The third is Understanding Your Community's Finances, and the fourth is the ABCs of Elections, which is why we have our guest here today, and that's a perfect segue into today's guest, John Gorman, who is an HOA COA election expert, our Condo Coach guest for the day. John, give us a little bit of background on your experience and how you managed to find yourself in this situation to, I guess, be the keeper of the peace in these HOA and COA elections.
Well, we do our best to say, we're here to just monitor, but the brief history is that I come from South Florida. I was there for the better part of 30 years. 2012, when I just started to do this as a licensed CAM, came on board with a few property management companies that I've learned that don't like certain things in particular at managing it. One of that is running the election every year, the annual meeting.
Sure.
Handling the insurance, because some of those things property managers just don't like.
Right.
I was fortunate, I suppose, in many ways to understand the statute, both the 718 statute and 61B ways of handling the election. It became more of a business, and I was fortunate to be called upon by many of the better-known law firms down in South Florida to be in an independent review of these condo associations.
And typically, how does one go about securing those services? I mean, again, for those of you wondering out there, the quick and easy answer is you can reach out to us here at the Condo Coaches. We'll get you plugged in with those individuals. But again, for some of those people who've never had an elections monitor for their association elections, what's that process like? One
of the reasons I became somewhat specialized in this area is that I was appointed by the state as one of the 17 election monitors. I say that because we went through a certified course. Now, again, I speak only on behalf of myself. I don't speak on behalf of the DBBR or the Ombudsman's office, but in many cases, they look for a total transparent and a person to monitor, oversee an election, a controversial election. Usually those go through a process of 15% of the unit owners to submit to the state for review. But more importantly, I've had many attorneys that I've worked with over the years in South Florida market that have said we needed an independent person to come in away from the property management, away from even themselves, so that we can make sure that the statute is followed as far as the electoral process.
Now, when you say independent, does that mean that you are solely independent, or independent from the standpoint that you are appointed by the Division of Business and Professional Regulation?
I go in as impartial as possible, without knowing anyone on the board, without knowing anything about their personal issues, with their financials. My focus, and the first thing I say to every one of them at that annual meeting, I'm here to monitor the integrity of the electoral process.
Okay.
With the South Florida and with the nation coming down out of a very controversial election, when you think of a president that says, I feel 3 million voters illegally voted in this last election, that's 0.9% of the nation. If you have a 100-unit condo that's had 10 uncertain ballots from those unit owners, that's 10%. That's huge to
Right.
most.
Yeah.
So in many ways, a lot of the attorneys that have been very helpful to me in building this opportunity to help these condos, the focus has always been on transparency. We've developed a method, I say we because I work this with my wife, who is Spanish speaking. We have worked it so that we show an excellent way of transparency for those. We do not contact the board members for any reason, if all possible. We try and
Until the meeting.
Until the meeting.
Right.
And the other major issue is that we focus on working with property management to say, look, this is your board. You're working with them. They're your client. But more importantly, you want this integrity for the process to work. So those individuals that are constantly thinking about conspiracy theories, they've heard of it in the national election. They've heard it from our state elections. Florida's
Even within the
notorious.
community. I mean, you hear about...
We had it in my fraternity. I mean, I'll have a conspiracy in my house.
Well, we had the one, remember that email a while back, and I'm not saying it was a conspiracy because they at least felt that they had enough evidence where it was founded in some truth, but they felt that the property manager was trying to manipulate the outcome of their elections.
Oh, that's a common one, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
very
so
common.
again, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but again, having that HOA monitor in place helps clear some of that anxiety and some of that lack of trust.
Well, I met John because he's a pro. He's compensated by the associations,
Yeah.
but he's an independent representative that's appointed or however it is with the state. I can't.
Ombudsman.
Yeah, I can't
Ombudsman's
say.
office.
Easy for you to say. You're not from. I'm a redneck, but anyway, he's appointed, so he really represents a neutral party.
Yeah.
And he and I've talked about it over a period of time. And as I become more of a coach, I find more and more these associations, why not hire one of these election monitors for all your elections and have that transparency?
But again, do you go to the Division of Business and Professional Regulation? Do you go to them and say, hey, we need an elections monitor? Or is this something that you can search for online and there's people that do this?
Well, there's two things. But yes, the first one is to go through the ombudsman's office. Again, there is a process. They have it all online. And again, I want to definitely say that I do not speak on behalf of the Florida Ombudsman's office.
Yep.
I'm fortunate that I have been chosen to be one of their many elected monitors to oversee some of these controversial type of condo elections that are forthcoming.
So the state has their group of election monitors, but then there are also people who do this privately as a business.
Right, which
Okay.
is what I also do. Now, the independent ones are also now, with the new law that passed in 2015 about electronic voting, that is becoming a very big part of it. And there's quite a few new companies that are encouraging it. I have worked one election last month that was the first ever election that had both paper ballot and the electronic ballot brought in,
Interesting.
which in itself is going to probably, for the next 5 years, you're going to see a transformation into the electronic process.
Right, a transition. Right.
It'll be a transition. Again,
Okay.
now, again, you'll still have that element from a particular association I did back in North Miami Beach about last month, that you still surprisingly have people that are fearful of even doing online banking,
Right.
let alone do they want to trust that process.
Well, we talked about people who still, there's a whole community of older folks who don't have internet even. And
Right.
so, again, no internet, no email, that brings up a whole bunch of other obstacles. All right. So we're talking HOA elections with our HOA elections coach, John Gorman, head coach, Dean Akers. Again, if you want to be a part of the show, there's a few ways you can do that. You can go to our website, submit your questions on there. You can also ask to get our free playbooks in the playbook section. Also, you can can email us, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. Also a great way to get a hold of us, and we'll pair you up with the right coach for your issue. And then call us, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. Segment 3 of the Condo Coaches coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Life is full of bittersweet transitions. It's difficult to know how these changes will impact us over time. For some people, difficult transitions like retirement, divorce, or loss of a loved one can hit harder than expected and may contribute to feelings of hopelessness or even thoughts of suicide. The risk of suicide is even higher for men over 50 who served our country. Guys like me. That's why support from friends and family makes such a big difference. Every day, your actions could help save a life. Together, we got this. Learn how you can help save a life at veteranscrisisline.net.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so much for listening. Segment 3 of the Condo Coaches radio show. Again, if you've missed any part of this or a previous episode, just look us up online, facebook.com/The Condo Coaches, on YouTube, The Condo Coaches, and of course the podcast version, my favorite version, because you don't have to see our ugly mugs. You can do that at iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Most of your popular and more well-known podcast services will carry the Condo Coaches, so just give us a look there. And if there's somewhere you'd like to see our show, please let us know, because like I've been telling Dean, I haven't stopped talking about my new Apple TV, and so I've been watching the show on there through their YouTube app, which is also a lot of fun. We are talking HOA elections, and we have, our expert for today's show, John Gorman, who has been doing this for years, both in the HOA and the COA arenas. Again, not a very popular job or thing to have to be involved with, but somebody's got to do it. Exactly. Any worse than you'd be there with Mike Rowe doing the dirty jobs.
Yeah. Hey, he and I were talking earlier, and he's he's a perfect election monitor because he stays right in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, John, buddy, we were talking about it. I said, why would anybody in the business not use an election monitor?
Yeah.
Period.
Sure.
Just for transparency.
Exactly.
Where's the downside? He looks at me and goes, there is no downside.
Remove all doubt.
Remove all doubt.
Yeah, that's right.
Even if you have a great election, why not have somebody monitor, verify it? It's, $1,000 or $2,000, whatever it costs.
Yeah.
In the big scheme of things, it's the right thing to do. I just don't. I'm sitting there going, I don't know why you even have time to be here today. That you should be doing this every hour on the hour across. Because the biggest thing, every call I get, when this thing rings, it's never, Dean, our association's board is doing a great job of communicating with us. I believe everything going on. I can't believe boards aren't just sitting there, that his phone's not jangling off the hook right now.
Yeah.
And we never promote coaches. That's part of our rule.
Sure, right.
This isn't a promoting of a coach. This is just
the service.
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely. Well, give us an idea, John, and of course this is going to vary depending on whether you're in Pensacola or you're down on Key Biscayne. Give us an idea, price range wise, what it would cost an association to have an election monitor.
Well, again, it varies, and I've seen other monitors that have different price ranges. I'm starting to see some of the electronic voting, for example, that again we'll start to see different ways of charging. They charge $600 administrative type fees, and then they may base it on a per unit basis. Generally, it's $2.50 to $3 a unit.
Okay.
I personally, do a combination of just assessment of what is all involved. Just so I just give you an idea what I think the ideal election monitor should do. I won't say that this is necessarily a recommendation, but this is how I follow it. I look at the fact of the obviously, the first thing I want to just know is the number of units. I don't want to know anything outside of that.
Right.
My focus is, like I said, the first thing I say to the front of the room, I am not here to be a sheriff. I have no authority to make any changes. My glory is looking at an envelope. So before we had the electronic voting process, it was literally to look at an envelope and say, is that going to be accepted? I go through, and I guess the popular word today word is a vetting process, the making sure that the unit owner is the verified unit owner. If they are using a voting certificate system to verify multiple owners, that there is a designated person. If you have, in many cases, you have a lot of associations, especially in South Florida, you have now bulk ownership. And many of those, of course, have to be following the same guidelines as an individual unit owner.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that the transparency, so that everyone that is suspicious of that one unit owner who is constantly on the board every year somehow winds up, or those people that are taking care of, and this is very important for 55 and older communities, those folks that are unable to, for whatever medical reasons, there is things stated in the statute about the opportunity to allow those folks to get help if they need assistance, especially the elderly, for voting, anything that they need to do for those purposes. There is a misuse of that particular process. And I've seen this in many of my elections. I've had approximately 70 elections. About a third of them have been to 55 and older communities. The ones in the Century Village type settings, it surprises me how everyone says I'm representing my grandmother or my mother who's sick, can't be here.
Yeah.
But again, it is a process of saying, are you the rightful person to vote for that unit?
And not that there's anything wrong with someone else representing that individual, but that there needs to be a process in place to verify that this person has granted this other individual that authority, right?
And I think it's important that through this process, that the verification of unit owners, this is where you have the possibilities of, as people allegedly say, fraud. We never used to say this is fraud. We do not try and say this is not the person's signature. We do not verify signatures, but we go through as much of a process to know that the rightful unit owner is expressing their right for the electoral process.
Well, because again, sometimes it may be unintentional, right? Where they think they're doing the right thing, or the intention is genuine, but they just went about it the wrong way, causing, again, there to be some reason why they're not allowed to vote.
Correct. And then there's many cases, for example, the double ballots that are submitted. Now, in the paper ballot system, obviously, you have to discard both, and the statute pretty much clearly says that. If you have an opportunity to see which one came first, but that doesn't always apply. You now have an electoral process that when someone votes online, and again, certain statutes state about the process, and I always advise those that are looking into it that the electoral company does have everything following the statutes, so that you know that you're working with a company that knows the law, especially when it comes to the combination of paper ballots with an electronic voting process.
So I would say this: if one of our listeners out here has a question for John or for the voting process, just shoot it through our system. We'll get it to John. I mean, I'm one of these guys that, like you and I've talked many times. I'm fairly new, a year and 4 and 5 months into this deal, and I can see that transparency and trust. I mean, those two T words in these condos, whether it's voting, budgets, finance, everything. Are important. And when I met John,
it wins every time.
Oh, I'm sitting there going, there is absolutely no downside to having your election monitored.
No, you just build it into the budget for every year because, again, it's peace of mind, and I think it earns that trust between the board and the residents year after year by doing the right thing. Let's get into, I guess, kind of an easier question. Sure. What's the most common mistake that you see out there when you see associations planning their elections? What's the common either misconception or misstep that they take when trying to execute their elections?
Probably the biggest is the timelines that they need to abide by, the 40-day rule, the mailing out rules. I think the biggest issue for some of those that are self-managed don't always understand the way the ballot should be written, and some of them like to put a seal to make sure it's an official ballot. Again, the statute doesn't address these types of things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the folks with this security feeling, insecure feeling, I think the biggest mistakes right now is following the process that they should be acknowledged. And again, they should be consulting with, if they are property management run, property managers should know the timelines of when everything should be mailed out properly. They should know that the candidates should all be alphabetized. There should not be any kind of reference that this person was the president or current member on the board that's on the ballot. Again, I see some of these that are usually dispelled before I enter the process.
You address those up front.
Well, and you have to. And again,
Sure.
you hope that you're working with a property manager or an attorney. And many times I will call the attorney. I'm one that loves to have the attorneys there. The attorneys are my ultimate, as we have instant replay in now sports. So when I make that umpire call and the guy came across the plate and he was safe, but the catcher dropped the ball, at least I have instant replay to say, well, I made my decision, he was safe, but then I didn't see that he dropped the ball.
That's right.
And that's where I have the attorney there. The attorney to me is my instant replay, and I want him to make the decision because in my final report, I make sure I am putting everything that the attorney may, and he may go totally against the statute. There's many attorneys that will. They'll challenge it and say, no, I don't believe that this is the way it should be done. I believe you should take both of those ballots. You know, I've had many unusual cases with attorneys.
Well, and again, if you are interested in having an election monitor at your next homeowner association or condominium association annual meeting, just reach out to us here at the Condo Coaches. We'll get you plugged in with the right person for you in whatever part of the state that you might be in. All you've got to do is reach out to us. You can do that a few ways. Again, our website, thecondocoaches.com. That's thecondocoaches.com. You can also email us, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com, because as I like to say, that's what we like to do around here.
Right.
And then lastly, of course, is our phone number, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. From anywhere across the United States, you can dial that number and reach us here at the Condo Coaches, and we will make sure that we get you plugged in with the right individuals if you choose to have an election monitor for your annual meeting. I'll throw a bit of a curveball here, but I think we may have to go into the answer into the next segment, but I think it makes for an interesting dynamic. Or maybe it's just a quick yes or no answer, right?
Okay.
Is a resident allowed to hire an election monitor? Or does it have to be done solely through the board? Obviously, we're talking about pretty costly, a situation here. But again, some of these communities can afford to do that. Have you ever seen where a resident has tried to contract an election monitor?
Well, I've happened to have a client that did that, but then again, that was also something that if that resident wants to endure the costs of that, that is, again, his discretion or her discretion, that if they choose to do that.
Okay.
I did have that particular case for a private client. And again, I'm fortunate that I have repeat clients. That's always the ultimate compliment.
Sure.
They say you have a repeat client.
That's right.
But the resident that did initially get me through the ombudsman's office then asked me independently that they put the funds aside and they said they would pay for it. I still refer everything to an attorney, and I also checked with the attorney if they felt that it was a rightful way. But I was surprised I had one. Now, again, is that a regular norm? I have not seen that.
All right. Well, we'll get into exactly kind of how that worked out here in the next segment, our final segment, the Condo Coaches radio show. Again, you can catch us anywhere, everywhere online. Just search for the Condo Coaches. Segment 4 with Dean Akers, John Gorman, coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Thanks, Julie. And coming up next, is there rain in your weekend forecast? We'll find...
Hey.
Hi.
It's been a while. Great place and nice neighborhood. You must have a strong community association board.
Thanks. I guess so, but I don't pay any attention to that stuff.
Seriously? How do you know for sure the board and community manager are making the right decisions to protect your investment?
I don't, but what am I supposed to do?
You can get involved and connect with CAI.
CA what?
CAI, Community Associations Institute, they're a nonprofit group that has helped us build a great community. They have free resources for your association board, professional training for community managers, and helpful information for homeowners.
Thanks. I'll definitely do that.
Is the time and investment you have made in your home and community protected? Be a smart homeowner and visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so much for listening. Hot topic of the day, HOA COA elections. That's right. Just about that time of year. Well, again, you can hold them whenever you want, I guess. But the annual meetings do come around every year, just like Christmas. And we are educating you on the best way to hold your HOA or COA elections so it can go smoothly and you can earn that trust of your fellow residents. And if you are a resident, so you can be more informed as to how this process actually works. And one of the things that, of course, we are talking about is having an election monitor, which is why we brought in John Gorman, who is a COA and HOA election monitor. He's also has years of experience as a property manager. And then, of course, joining us as always, head coach Dean Akers. In the last segment, we were talking about a resident contracting an election monitor. How did that go over with the board? What was that? How does that change the process? Because you're not there on behalf of the board. You're there. Are you still there as an individual, or are you working on behalf of your client? How does that change the dynamic of what you do in that situation if a resident decides to bring you into a meeting?
The ultimate client is the association, the entity itself.
Okay.
So if the money is coming,
whether they hire you or not,
whether they hire me or not.
Okay.
But, again, those are the types of things when an individual says, I want you, you did a great job from your previous election. That's great. But again, I have to make sure that just like what the beginning of the show, when you talked about the treasurer that made a decision taken upon themselves to sign a contract. When they sign my contract, I do have a clause that says if there's a cancellation, normally there's a cancellation fee, because I put maybe 2 to 3 hours of time beforehand to make sure that our process of understanding which unit owners are delinquent and some of these types of things that we have to account for.
Get a true assessment. Well, and you're trying to get a true assessment of who is
Correct.
or isn't eligible to vote before the election day even comes around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It saves hours and hours of time. I've had elections go into 5 and 6 in the morning. And many of my war stories, I've had people that want a FBI forensic expert to come in and look at signatures. Unfortunately, I'm not acknowledged in that profession to where I can say a signature is valid or not. That's not part of it.
Get out the little magnifying glass,
Well, and believe me, there is so many suspicions. And again, I only see that it's only going to continue to get worse in today's world, because there is that anxiety of the certain members of the board. It's almost like how we look at our national politics. We've heard the phrase drain the swamp. Well, there's the individual 10 or so unit owners that are just upset with the fact that the other 90 unit owners are constantly supporting the same board.
Well, the level of skepticism, I think, just nationally has just risen to a very incredible level.
Well, it's because the board members get compensated so highly.
That's right.
And they get that lifetime health insurance.
The golden parachute.
Yeah, I don't look at this. I don't look at this as like a senator that's making, $200,000 or $300,000 and gets lifetime health insurance that nobody else gets. Right. These are all volunteers. People are arguing over volunteers. We had one board where everybody was upset. And I said, okay, great. I was coaching them. Let's go out and really get some people to run.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't get anybody.
Oh, wow.
So I met with one of the guys that was upset, and I said, why wouldn't you run? He goes, I don't have time to mess with all this. I said, wait a minute. It's like the guy, I'll sit there, and I'll have friends of mine going, I can't believe what's going on in national politics and stuff. I go, did you vote? Nope. I said, then shut up. Yeah. How many friends have you seen? I mean, what was the voter turnout for our national politics?
It was 30, 40%?
Yeah. I mean, and then everybody wants to bitch. I mean, everybody wants to moan about it. At the end of the day, they don't even vote.
Yeah, if you don't vote, you can't complain.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that should apply to HOAs and COAs too.
I've never seen so many people arguing for something to volunteer. If they really want to argue to volunteer, they can volunteer to mow my yard. And I'll have them all come on up, and we'll just designate some volunteers to mow my yard.
Well, and again, they probably never come to the meetings. No. And they don't vote in the elections. No. And then when things aren't going the way they want them to, they wonder why is everything, all screwed up.
Why everything's wrong.
Well, and one of the things I keep finding, Johnny, if our message gets out, and we ended the show today, why boards aren't transparent, why they don't give the information, it's all required by law. Just give it to them. I've got a lady in Orlando that's so upset. She's called me 4 times, and they're requiring her to do 10-day notice. They're requiring everything, and they're just making her jump through every hoop possible, including
a big worse than the federal government.
Oh, it's bigger. It's a big management company too, so it's not some little rinky-dink management company. Do you think this lady for 1 second trusts that board or management company?
No.
No
way.
And knowing the management company, it's a big one.
Yeah.
Knowing this board is a big association, they're not doing anything illegal. Mm-hmm. They're not doing anything crooked. But the communication and transparency, that's why when I got Mr. Gorman to come on, I sat there and go, if people aren't hiring election monitors just because, they should just do it.
Yeah. And it's almost kind of a red flag if they don't.
Well, it's a lot of things, but
unless you got a small community. If you got a big community and you don't have somebody monitoring your elections, that's a red flag in my book.
A, there's no downside.
Right.
B, a guy like John Gorman doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
So you've got this just tremendous lift of transparency. And again, if we went off the air today and nothing ever happened again, transparency, trust, and when in doubt, trust and transparency. And then when in doubt, transparency and trust.
Right. Which can all be accomplished through communication.
Bingo. Do you think that works everywhere?
No.
No, just only in condo associations.
So here during the commercial break, you have this lovely stack of papers here, of all the different documents and forms and things. But here, this one actually caught my attention. It's a post-election summary sheet. It's got a lot of great information in terms of number of association units, number of candidates, number of vacancies, time the meeting was called to order. Pretty much, this is giving me. Is it just a breakdown of what took place? Right.
It's a who, what, when, where, and why of that night of the election. Very importantly, it is for those that are going to be conspiring to say it was rigged.
Right.
Those that want to go, and again, as the law states, you have to keep the electoral records together for a year for anyone to review and to make sure that the envelopes were properly done, etc. My sheet's a little more comprehensive. I give the attorney that was there. I give if they're in many cases, I have seen the petitioner have an attorney. And when you ask about people calling me individually, there are those units that have had attorneys represent those that are upset.
Sure.
Again, I can probably take up another 2 hours of war stories.
I bet.
The war stories in South Florida, it's due to the fact that there's a diverse, and again, I look at it as a positive since I moved to South Florida 35 years ago. I was fortunate to be in part of the tourism business, to see the diversity of our community. And I'm very, very key of being a believer of the mixed community we have, of cultures and religions. But when it comes to running a business, an entity by itself, and get those folks that blend in with that community, it doesn't work.
Right.
When you get the Canadians that come in and say, well, this is the way we do it in Canada, or the New York crowd that comes and says, well, this is how we do it in New York. It's a science. It's running a business. And a policeman is not going to run an association's non-for-profit business as a librarian or the retired workers.
And again, just the way our country is designed, I mean, Florida might as well be another country. And I'm sure there's people out there who certainly believe Florida is a whole nother country. But the rules, the laws, all of that changes from state to state, which is,
correct.
Unfortunate because, I mean, there's people that have wanted the condo coaches to go as far north as New York and as far west as Seattle, and so there's certainly a demand, again, for the education that we're doling out here and for services like yours. Easy question for you would be if someone's behind on their association fees, are they eligible to vote? I think that's a good question too. Probably happens a lot.
I'll make this a quick answer. The statute basically says 90 days they're ineligible, but okay. In many cases I have to check with the association to see if the board has rectified that, if they have made it known that if that is if that hasn't been put in the minutes of the meetings, previous meetings, that in many cases the attorney, again, I look for the attorney to make that call. They say, well, in this last election, I did have to accept those that were 90-day delinquent units. I have taken the ones that are bank owned.
Does that have to be noticed? Do those?
It does have to be noticed,
Okay.
yeah. But in some cases, but again, that's one of the first questions I ask.
Okay.
Could that be a policy, though, where the board votes as part of the policy is anybody that's 90 days or older based on statute cannot vote?
Correct. And a lot of times, as I said, I just like to know that it is, and then get that clarification before we start.
So that's a good idea for associations in their collection policy
That's
to
right.
add that as a...
Well, and again, that's encouragement right there.
Right.
You know,
I'm going to make a note
get
of that
some people
because
to
that's
get caught
another...
up.
Yeah.
That's a very good note. All right. Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, John.
Incredible insight. I'm sure we'll have you on again, because these babies come around every year, and it's never a dull moment when it comes to HOA and COA elections. So we appreciate your expertise here on the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with
Any
Condo
closing
Coaches.
words, Mr. Dean Akers?
John's headed. He's flying down into South America to do some elections down there with his machine gun. No, we're in the United States.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Condo Coaches. Find us online for all of our episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Till next time.
You've been listening to the Condo Coaches, brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find us online at thecondocoaches.com and join us this same time next week as we help you navigate life in your managed community.